Excellent. So good morning again, everybody, and welcome to today's session. I'm Gabriel, Management Executive at First Digital, a first technology company. We are super excited to host today's event and give you this great overview of Microsoft Syntex. Machine learning and artificial intelligence are creeping into our business at a rapid rate, making our companies and our people better and more efficient. And we feel that Microsoft at the moment is leading the way with regards to this. Syntex is a powerful example of how commoditized AI is not taking away from us, but opening up brand new opportunities. And I put the claim on commoditized because today we are not talking about what if kind of technology, such as chatting with a clever AI bot, but we are showing a real world example of business focused AI driven software, which is quite exciting. Just before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. Today's session will be recorded and it will be made available to you on our YouTube channel. Details of that will be shared with you guys after the event. So please feel free to refer a colleague to it who might have missed today's session. Due to the size of the audience, we actually had real interest in this webinar. Everybody will be muted, and we ask that you post any questions in the Q&A window, which you will find accessible in your Teams client. You will find that Q&A window by clicking on the Q&A icon at the top right-hand side of your Teams window. Questions asked will be discussed by our host, who I'll introduce in a minute, towards the end of the session. Um, in the unlikely event that we don't get to all the questions, we will share our contact details with you guys afterwards, and you can please make contact with us. Also, please feel free to use the emoji option inside Teams to express your emotion if you see something that's either disappointing or hopefully exciting. So in today's session, we'll look at how Microsoft Syntex can drive efficiencies into your business. The session is hosted by Gary Finberg. He's our Senior Technical Manager in our Digital Workplace division here at First Digital. And Microsoft is a long-standing partner of First Digital. It's a relationship that dates back to the inception of First Digital. So we're really excited today to demonstrate this new technology from them with you. Also in the background is Stephanie Brainard. She's managing the webinar. So if you have any issues or challenges, please try and reach out to her using the Teams chat function. Right, so just quick introduction to First Digital. We build out many value-added services around various technology verticals. Our business is a fully operating subsidiary within the First Technology Group, and we focus on four main areas. Custom software development within our innovation team, automation and integration for low-code development and business process automation, our data and analytics team, which is almost 100% focused on the data toolset and the BI and analytics toolsets from Microsoft. And then lastly, Gary representing today our digital workplace team. These guys focus on value-added services, mostly around the Office 365 stack, Power Platform, Microsoft Viva, and as you would also be seeing today, Microsoft Syntex. So before we start, we'd like to do a quick poll. You'll see that come up in your Teams client now. And the question that we're posing to our audience today is your business using any tools for document automation today? So your three options there are no, you're thinking about it, or yes. So I'll give you a couple of seconds just to submit your poll response there. Okay, great. So we've got some responses coming in. About half of the audience are using tools for document automation, which is great. And about the other half is split between no or thinking about it. And I'm really hoping that we appeal to that audience also specifically today by demonstrating the tool set to you. So in this session, Gary will explain the components of Microsoft Syntex. He'll give you an overview of the technology, and most importantly, he'll give you a few demonstrations of the technology in action. So I guess without further delay, Gary, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for the intro, Gabriel. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to participate in the webinar today. Today, we're going to focus on Microsoft Syntex, which is an exciting new content AI solution from Microsoft. So you might have heard it referred to a while back as Project Cortex, was the initial name of this technology. It was eventually renamed to SharePoint Syntex and is currently known as Microsoft Syntex. It's also available as a service in Microsoft 365. So Syntex is a content understanding, processing, and compliance service that uses intelligent document processing, content AI, and advanced machine learning to automatically find, organize, and classify documents in your SharePoint libraries. So key to note that it's a service that's highly integrated into SharePoint, and its interface and functionality is all housed in SharePoint. Syntex also enables automated processes that leverage UI and AI, such as summarization, translation services. There's automatic document assembly. You can automate annotations on documents, metadata management services, and integrating data into your content. So for documents that sit within SharePoint libraries. It also delivers elements such as search and e-signatures with additional tools to manage the lifecycle of the content. So it's a super comprehensive content automation and document automation platform. Fundamentally, it helps you understand, assemble, discover, and reuse content with AI capabilities in your current flow of work, such as Teams and SharePoint. So that's a big initiative from Microsoft at the moment, is to kind of break the disconnect between, the disparate and multitude of technologies that, we're asking our user base to work with, and sort of get over this concept of sort of application switching and task switching. So one of the big drivers with kind of SharePoint, with Microsoft Viva, and something like also Power BI and something like Syntex, is to bring all of this into what Microsoft call your current flow of work. So where you're working in Teams, have all of these elements kind of surfaced in chat in Teams, for example, or in the interface of Teams or in the interface of SharePoint. So you don't need to be moving between tons of different applications, which kind of breaks your focus. So examples are that, Syntex uses no-code AI. So that's another really important aspect to be aware of with Syntex. No-code, to get it working, very no-code. You can obviously leverage code to enhance it. And we'll if there's time, we'll talk about how it can use premium connectors with the Graph API to kind of call out to external services. But fundamentally, for what we're going to be talking about today, it's strictly no-code to help you manage all your incoming content. And this is a key topic and a challenge and pain point for most businesses today. Massive proliferation of content, huge influx and ingestion of content in the environment. And how do we manage that? We've got classification, retention issues to consider for legal compliance and financial compliance. And there's a lot of stress around kind of how we manage this sort of massive overload of content. So this is one of the areas where kind of Syntex really kicks in, is able to kind of do sort of dynamic content assembly, dynamic content creation, dynamic assignment of sensitivity labels, of retention labels, and we'll see how all of that works in a sec. Syntex also automatically understands key information based on extraction and classification models. So we'll look at how that works. We'll build a couple of models so you can see, how Syntex classifies and does its extraction, extracts metadata, and applies retention and sensitivity labels, and secures the content without the need for manual tagging or entry. So typically, these are all tasks and activities that are highly time-consuming, error-prone, and tedious. This automation is going to guarantee compliance and security for your organization while freeing your users to work on higher priority tasks. So that's also a key aspect, is that information workers are under a lot of pressure. They're really busy with their core tasks, and to expect them to be focused on, tagging content and, applying labels and managing the security and retention is not realistic. You can also use Syntex to OCR and dynamically extract metadata from structured documents. So, for example, things like invoices, receipts, and checklists that are typically bulk operations, which are very, very time consuming. So, where users might need to upload PNGs or various images of scanned documents, or in the worst case scenario, actually uploading documents and then still having to go and capture all the metadata manually per document is also not reasonable. So we'll show how kind of Syntex assists in that regard. And then sort of using this dynamic metadata extraction, you can leverage that metadata in kind of automation using Power Automate. So we'll see how sort of Syntex works in conjunction with Power Automate to kind of pick up, Power Automate can pick up the ball and run with it, so to speak. You can also use it to generate summaries of content to distill key points from unstructured documents using rules. So, for example, typical regular work like extracting information from project management reports, meeting notes, legal contracts, or SOWs, for example, can help you focus on what's important and needs action rather than spending the time going through the tasks of extracting all this, the abstracts or that kind of data from these documents. So another key aspect is that not only does Syntex allow you to better understand what's in your content, but you can also use it to automatically generate new content or documents. So things like contracts, agreements, invoices, receipts, CVs, or letters. All of these things can be dynamically generated using Syntex and leveraging off templates and metadata that were previously extracted or gathered from other sources. So you can use something like a SharePoint list to kind of dynamically populate these document types that have been trained. So just stepping back a little bit, all of these capabilities will help ensure like standard and quality response documents in less time with fewer errors. So that's a big challenge for most modern companies is, we might have tons of templates. Every time a salesperson, a project manager, someone takes, or even in the legal department, sort of starts a new document, they typically go to a template, they got to search and replace, that type of thing. So we'll see how Syntex completely gets rid of that. And as part of that process, the benefit is this kind of standardized and quality response documents that you get. Something that's also pretty powerful is that if you need to send a document through an approval process, you can sign documents using Syntex built-in e-signature features or leverage an external signing service like DocuSign, and you can also use a combination of both. So internally, you can be using Syntex, and when that document goes to a client for signing or an external party, they can leverage off their signing service. So it's kind of like a hybrid support. A couple of last points. Syntex is also fully integrated, as I mentioned, into SharePoint, and it builds on top of SharePoint Search to bring like some really powerful new ways to query and discover content in the environment. So as we'll see with Syntex enabled in your SharePoint environment, you get a new capability of your search block, which lets you dynamically sort of create kind of custom managed properties that are from the extracted metadata, so you can increase your granularity of your search. Lastly, it brings a new concept called AI-powered search, which helps you search by concepts instead of exact text. So you're able to type in an English concept or question, and Syntex, in conjunction with a tool, a capability called Viva Topics, which is a little bit out of the scope of the session today, but probably cover in a subsequent session, sort of can bring back these answers to your questions and related concepts, via this sort of combination of Syntex and topics. So that was just a kind of bird's eye view kind of intro into what Syntex is, just to sort of prep you guys for what we're going to be talking about in the slides, and then more importantly, sort of going to the demo. So I'm just going to share my screen with you guys. Okay, so basically you're just going to talk about three things. What is Microsoft Syntex? I've given a bit of an intro. I'm going to quickly move through a couple of slides that will sort of key you into some of the core concepts. There are a couple of screenshots in there just to, cue you in visually. Then the main focus is really go to the demo, and I'm going to demo a couple of different aspects. We'll demo creation of a structured extraction model, of an unstructured document extraction model, and we'll look at creating what's called a modern template. And then we've prepared a demo to you guys to kind of show you a bit of an end-to-end scenario, which takes place in like a contracts management site in SharePoint. And then we'll go to questions. So the first thing I just wanted to show you guys quickly is just to give context for where Syntex fits into the overall Microsoft picture. So Microsoft have a stack called the Knowledge and Content Services, and you'll probably recognize a number of these sort of items. So you can see that in the top layer, we have content experiences, and Syntex fits right in there along with Microsoft Viva, OneDrive, Stream, the video platform, and Microsoft Teams, so that you can see it's effectively a content experience, or that's the way Microsoft have sort of placed it in the stack. Then you can see this is built on the Content Services platform. So here we have, things you'll recognize like the Power Platform capabilities. We'll look at some Power Automate and maybe some Power BI today if there's time. Then the Microsoft Purview or 365 Security and Compliance Center, Microsoft Search, and then a Microsoft Graph. So the Graph API is effectively like the brain, or you could think of it as a turnstile at the core of Microsoft 365, and literally every sort of transaction or activity that's happening, it passes through the Graph API. So if we just look down a little bit further, you'll see that these cloud tenant components of Azure and supporting component of SharePoint. And then access, this is very exciting sort of going forward, is access to third-party content via, I think there are about 130, API connectors. So that's kind of an exciting component that besides being able to work with content in your SharePoint space, you can connect out to tons of different environments and other content sources and locations to pull that into your automation processes. So I've already touched on this. I'm just going to move past this quickly, but these are the kind of core areas that we're going to look at is content understanding. So basically building these AI models, and those AI models help us to kind of classify our content and then extract the information that we want so that we can apply and use that metadata for, whether it's in search or whether it's in kind of document creation. Content processing. So capturing, ingesting, and categorization of content. So we'll have a look at that and how Power Automate kind of sort of increases that capability. We'll look at compliance. So obviously a core aspect today is we need to conform to various compliance standards, and Microsoft Syntex is fully integrated with Microsoft Purview. So for example, two typical examples would be your sensitivity labels, and your retention labels. So a sensitivity label will classify something as maybe confidential or top secret or business or finance type document with a supporting policy. And a retention policy determines the life cycle of your data. So, from the date of creation, what is the legal life cycle? Maybe 5 years later, this content should be moved to an archive. 5 years after being in the archive, legally we can digitally shred that, for example. So in the compliance center, you're able to create these policies, and the beauty of Syntex is that you're able to define that in your models so that when you upload documents to a library that has the sensitivity labels defined or retention labels, these automatically get tagged with those labels. So it saves massive housekeeping and effort. Content services. So we'll talk about the power of using these this consistent tagging, to build standards into the environment. So a simple, huge payoff for having standardized tagging is, if you think about it, unclassified content is in a sense lost content, because if it's not classified effectively or tagged appropriately, it's not going to come up in search. So, it's something to consider, that the more effectively we can classify, the more we max out the value of our IP. Pardon me. And then lastly, content discovery. So kind of the ability to, again, with this proliferation of content, you don't have a Google experience where you search and you've got page 1 of 3 million results. So leveraging this kind of consistency of tagging, leveraging this integration with Microsoft Search, and this natural language search capability in conjunction with topics, we get a whole new kind of search experience, and we get new level of value out of our data. Okay, so probably a core question is, what's it going to cost me, and what is the licensing model? So as you know, Microsoft licensing, to put it politely, is kind of fluid. It's kind of always changing, but the current snapshot is as follows. So Syntex is available sort of as a user-based add-on for Microsoft 365 plans. To use Syntex, you must have a license for each Syntex user. So here you can see there's the various plans that will allow you to qualify. And then there are 2 models though. So there's a per user licensing, which is currently at 89 Rand per month per user, obviously. And so to use Syntex, you must have a license for each user. The important to note that if you remove all your per user licenses from your tenant, users will no longer be able to create, publish, or run models. So just to be aware of that. And then pay as you go. So pay as you go is a way to kind of get up and running fast with the least kind of commitment using an Azure subscription. But the limitations there is that it only supports pre-built and unstructured document processing. So we'll unpack that so you can see what that means. Just also to note, after this session, we'll make available this deck and a much more detailed deck, because we obviously couldn't fit everything into an hour, and that's got a lot more information around the licensing. Okay, so to get into Syntex itself, basically, once you've signed up and you've kind of enabled Syntex in your kind of Microsoft 365 admin environment, and you're licensed for it, you're able to then sort of create the Syntex Content Center. So it's kind of an automatic process that you can trigger, and it builds out. It's effectively a glorified site template inside SharePoint. So here you can just see a bit of a screenshot. We're going to drill into what this looks like. But this is like a default content center. And basically what that is it's a template with sort of pre-built libraries. It's got sort of specific content types. It's got all the capabilities that you need to kind of start working with Syntex. So it kind of lets you manage your models and your processes. It's sort of integrated into SharePoint, so you're able to kind of push out models to libraries and utilize shared kind of content types. Lets you publish your models. It's got some kind of analytics, which kind of shows some of the activity that's happening around your models. And it lets you kind of share and automate your content with Power Automate. So just a couple of things so that you recognize them when we kind of log in. 2 things. One is to note that some of the model creation relies on Microsoft's AI Builder. So if you've ever looked inside the Power Automate kind of make environment, you'll see there's kind of AI Builder, and that has some of these models. So when you, for example, when you're doing extraction from a structured invoice or a receipt, that actually leverages AI Builder models. So what you do also need to be aware of is that when you get your license, Microsoft give you a bunch of AI Builder credits that you need to activate when you want to use it. So if you have set this environment up and you can't see these options, or you're unable to run an invoice processing or receipt processing, just make sure you go into your Power Platform admin environment and go to your add-ons and allocate some AI Builder credits. So here are a couple of these options. You get what's called teaching method, and that's basically something like a service agreement, an SLA, like a semi-structured contract, where you might have some boilerplate at the top, contract name, client address, that type of thing. And we'll look at one of those. We'll build one of those. There's a free form selection method. So that's literally, you train your model based on completely random, it's not pattern oriented. There's a layout method. So this is also looking at sort of, for example, tables, where you've got like rows and tables. You can go and like work on specific layouts. And then using pre-built models like invoice processing, which we'll look at now, and receipt processing. Just quickly, two basic model types, just for the concept. So there's effectively document understanding models, okay? And these are kind of like semi-structured or unstructured. And let's say these are more unstructured, and then forms processing, which is structured and semi-structured. So where this is semi-structured is that typically, like an invoice will, globally, invoices have got a fairly standard layout, like maybe invoice number top right, customer information top left, a table of line items and some like payment or totals. But they might be in like slightly different. So that's where we say semi-structured. But Syntex can handle all of that. So on the unstructured document side, that's for unstructured. So you can see here there's a kind of sample contract type. That model gets created inside an interface. So we're actually looking at the document and we apply tags to the document. And what we do is we extract sentences or regions of the document, and we've got like a trainable classifier. So I'll show you how that works today. And then you can apply that to multiple libraries. The forms processing is for a structured document like a form or an invoice. That gets created from within a document library. And you can leverage Power Platform and AI Builder for that, but that's restricted to a specific library. And we'll have a look at these in a sec. Just some of the services. So you can work with content manually. You can use object detection. So I haven't got that in the demo today, but you can process like a digital content. So if it's a photo, a scan, like an ID, a business card, a video, you can OCR all of the stuff and integrate it into your processes. And we've talked about forms and document understanding. Just a couple of high-level benefits: reduce manual labor and avoid human error. So I mentioned that this process eliminates this automatic, it does the automatic tagging, labeling, and organizing, so you don't have to. It improves your searchability. It's integrated with Purview. Enhanced collaboration. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but you can also do like some of the more lower level PDF functions like annotation, redaction, and sort of some PDF management. We can use the metadata that we get to drive workflows. We can build new files, and I already mentioned that it's extensible. And then just some common use cases. So customers are using this to track data from invoices, track data or information from contracts with document understanding, automate order processing, and to extract risks and safety methods from some risk assessments. So there are tons of use cases for that. Besides the strict examples we're going to use today, when you apply these solutions to challenges in your environment, it's very extensible. Cool. So that's sort of enough of the slides and the talking. Just want to get into a demo. So firstly, a quick tour of the Syntex Content Center, so you can see where everything is located. Then time dependent, we'll see what we can get through. But the first one is just to show invoice OCR and metadata extraction. Then look at an unstructured document model. So we'll take something like a service agreement, then a modern template creation. So we'll show where you can take something like a service, say an SLA, and use data in a SharePoint list to dynamically populate that. And then a kind of contracts management solution, which hopefully shows the end-to-end process where we request a contract, it gets kind of processed, you'll see the team's kind of approval and that type of interaction happening. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing this. Just give me a sec to get to my browser.
I think, Gary, while you get that up, I'll just take one of the questions quickly. Let's just pick the first one here that Louis posted. He specifically asked when you mentioned the costs of Syntex, if it's included in any of the E-SKUs, E5 specifically, or only as an add-on. And Chris there from our digital workplace team has confirmed that at the moment, at least, it's not included in any of the SKUs. It's treated as a bolt-on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Louis, as I was saying, with Microsoft, things are always fluid, and they're often testing the market to see, what licensing will work. But Chris is correct. That's the current scenario. You must have a license or use the pay-as-you-go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that list of SKUs is more just what supports, your ability to use it. Cool. So guys, this is the Syntex Content Center. So as I mentioned, when you provision this, it's basically like a site template, like you've probably seen, and you can access this in the Microsoft Lookbook. If you go to the site options, you'll see there's a little tab called Syntex, and it gives you 3 options. So there's the Syntex Content Center. So when you deploy this into your SharePoint environment, so you can see this is deployed into our digital workplace SharePoint tenant, and this is what you get. So you basically get sort of a landing page. This is random, it's configurable. But more importantly, down here, I mentioned you can see there's some kind of BI showing like activity and just, showing a list of available models. Here you have your models sort of area where you can create new models. And here you'll see, this is what I was referring to a little bit earlier. And sorry, my mouse is not behaving. There's an area where you can store your training files. And we'll look, and that's just sort of a convenience. And you've got, I've set up 3 little scenarios here where we're going to do some demos. And effectively, that's the environment. It's like a glorified template. Something to also note is that there are 2 other templates that you can deploy, 2 of which I'll show you today. One is a kind of a contracts management portal scenario, and the other one is an accounts payable portal scenario. So it's basically like a little idea in a box that you can get started with. So what we'll do first is just go to like a structured invoice. We'll upload some invoices. We'll train it to extract certain metadata that we want, and then we'll just prove that concept by uploading some invoices into a library, and the model will classify and extract all of that. So all of the metadata that is captured or that was defined in those invoices will be extracted into columns in that SharePoint library. So if you note here, this is just a regular SharePoint library, but you will note that there's one extra option up here called classify and extract. So we'll get there in a sec. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to models, and we're going to create a new model. And as I mentioned, we'll look at these, but we're going to create an invoicing processing model. And here you can see it just gives you some examples of what the process looks like. This name becomes the name of your model. So I'll call it invoice demo. and it gives you some instructions of what else to do. Okay, so now we're in this invoice demo model, and we've got some steps to complete. So first thing is we choose add a file, and we're going to go and add some files. So I've got some just going to upload a couple. Sorry, I'm having issues with that mouse. Sorry, guys, just had a bit of an issue with this mouse. It doesn't seem to. Sorry about this.
Now, Gary, we always wish the demo demons away, and then it's the mouse that lets you down.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing. Just give a sec. Just I just want to change the battery on the mouse. Apologies for this, guys.
No problem. Chris, I don't know if you want to chip in on one of the questions that was asked there while we just get Gary to beat his mouth into submission, his mouse. Shalendra has asked if there's any means that you guys know about to counteract plagiarism. It's a pretty good question. Just make sure that I make Chris a presenter.
So I can comment on that, Gabriel. So I think the mouse seems to have sorted itself out.
Okay, sorry. There was more to get you off the hook, Gary.
Okay, but no, I'd welcome Chris's comment, but just to note that you could potentially use information rights management, with some policies on there which would block people from copying content or right-clicking or programmatically accessing content in a document. So you would use your information rights management, which is actually free capability in SharePoint Online. You just need to enable it at the tenant level and then apply that policy to a document library. So it operates per document library locally and only when files are in transit. So only if you download a file, that policy will kick in. So if someone tries to take that file off the network or access it even on the network, if the policy it's encrypted in the document determines that you cannot right-click or copy content, that's one potential way to avoid plagiarism, although you can't stop people from taking a photo.
Right. Okay. Let's explore that one a little bit more, Gary, now that you've got functional mouse again.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I've uploaded a couple of these files, and you can see these are just some sort of fictitious ones. And if you note up here, you can say it's finding extractors. So this is the model actually operating on this document, and it's looking at, they put a lot of effort into this, so this kind of automatically kind of trains. So now it asks you, it pulls out, you can see on the right here, we've got all these elements that have been extracted. So you can see everything that's in green is some extracted element, right? So say, yes, we want customer ID, we want customer name, we want invoice dates, we want invoice, I'm just going to select them all. PO, subtotals, you can see it's even going down into the kind of values down at the bottom. And then we're at the end. So now effectively, what it's done is it's extracted all of these. So now I can select which ones I want in my model, and I can then click Save and Exit. And now all I need to do, so this model's being created, and all I need to do is apply the model to a library. So I'm going to go to, oh wait, it's in a different, sorry, one sec. It was, let's see, invoice processing, and then add that. So that's going to apply this model to that library. And now I can go to the library, and you'll see what it's done is it's laid out all of the columns. So these are all the columns that it's effectively created a content type, right? So now if I upload a bunch of these invoices to that library, it's now going to process these. So it says we're analyzing your files. You'll see the extracted info in the columns of the library. So this is processing a tape, takes a couple of minutes. I'll just refresh that. But while that's happening in the background, let's just move on to the next one, and we can come back and check that out in a sec. So we've got this contracts library. What we're going to do is, you'll see there's nothing in it at the moment, but that it is a syntax library because you can see this option available there. But now we're going to go back to models, and we're going to create like an unstructured kind of model. So we're going to use the teaching method here. So here you can see it's different. We're not, it's not a structured document. It also tells us a little bit about it and tells us which supported file types. And then I click next, and I'll just say, let's say, services agreement model. Right. Now this one is different in that this one you need to train. So the invoices one is fully there out of the box. This you need to train. So I'm just going to sort of add some files, and I will say these sample contracts. Now, what you do is you'll see you need to give 5. Now, here's a big difference between traditional sort of machine learning or AI and this modern stuff. Before, you used to have to train like tons of documents. Now you can just use 5, and then you use 1 that's a negative. So this invoice is obviously not a contract. So I basically add those. So that's the first thing, is just get your documents in there. Now we need to train this. So we go into the training, and all we're wanting to do is we just want to tell this that this document, this Allender Young contract, is an example of the services model. So we say yes, and you'll see it steps through the document. So that is an example. This one is an example. Now this one is obviously not, so we tell it no, like that's not an example. And then yes, these are examples. So, and now it will tell me you've labeled a sufficient number of files. Now you can move on to train, or you can continue labeling. So let's just move on to the train option. Now, here's where we've got to train this, and I'm only going to do 1 or 2 examples because this can become quite sort of tedious. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to choose something that's like specific to the document. You know, so we want to say show the model where services agreement is, you know, the title. And we move through all the documents and just sort of label this. Okay, and we can go through all of them, right? Then we're going to say train. Oh, sorry, I didn't complete them. So let's just go into this one. Sorry, guys, this is not ideal for... Okay, next file. Okay, so we want to go to train. And now we give it something called an explanation, right? So we want to say that services agreement, and we want to, an explanation is something that gives it context for that piece of text, right? So say for services agreement, that might appear in multiple places in the document. So what we do is we use like prefix phrases and suffix phrases. So I take from a template and actually, let me do it this way, simpler one. Let's just say take the date to start. And you'll see it brings back, these are predefined templates from Microsoft. And now I can say save and train. And you'll see it's looking over here, and it's now come back and evaluated the accuracy of that, and it's given it a match. So I can move on, and you can see it's 100% accuracy. And then just to get out of that, you can do some extra testing if you want or not. So now what we got to do, and I'm only going to do one or two because it's in the interest of time, but now we've got to create entity extractors for each one of these. So I've got some already created. So say the first one I want to use is like contract, just see contract type, and I'll create that. So now you see it's created this extractor called a contract type. Now what I need to do is train it for this. So I'll go and say services agreement. Right. So that's a definition of what this is. And I click to next, go to the next file, selected. So these are on my training files. I'm just selecting that placeholder. And this one you say no label because it's the exception. And then this one, I choose this. Next file. And now I can save that. So now you can see I've saved all of these labels. Now again, I go to train. And so this is a little bit tedious that you need to train each one. So now what I do is to locate this properly and get a proper match. I can click from a template and I can choose the before label. So it will look at the content. And it will find what was before services agreement in a couple of those documents, right? And then what I can also do to be sure, I can go and add another template and say after. And so that tells me some other options. Now I can save and train. So it comes back and it's given all of these have matched, which means there's a high degree of accuracy or it's guaranteed that this will be replaced. And, you know, again, you've got lots of options in these templates here, you know, for all different kind of to help you, but you can put in your own. So you can create a new blank one if you want. So I'm just gonna stop at that in the interest of time, and then kind of test. I will exit the training, and then we want to, again, as before, apply this model to a site. So let's say this one was, I'll call it contracts, and then add this. I should have mentioned that, I'll show you that now. So now we've applied it to this library. Now, if I upload some of these sample contracts, just go and get a couple. Okay, while those are being processed, let's go back here. So you can see this was the invoices demo. So we just uploaded those documents and it's extracted all of that metadata for us. So you can see how useful that is immediately, because we can have a workflow, you know, on new item or whatever it is, fire and do some calculations. And if it's above a certain amount, it goes to a certain person, if it's overdue or whatever it might be. So it's just a simple sort of extraction example. And then here is this, okay, we'll allow that to sort of happen. And then just one other quick demo while that is extracting is there's a different type. And this is sort of the document assembly. So the way this works is you create what's called a modern template. And that's also a function of Syntex being installed in the environment. So I will just go and grab one of these contracts. And now you'll see, it's almost like a different tool set that we're working in. So the way this would work is, say I want to dynamically populate this. So, and we'll see what that looks like in a bit more of a real world scenario. So I can choose like a new field and I can call it, say, contract type. And I've selected that and I click next. And now I can choose. I can say select from an existing list. So let's say I go to, let me find it in here, and contract requests. Here we go. So the idea here is that people adding items to a new contract request list will trigger off this document creation. So I'm just going to sort of find that. So that was contract type. So obviously this list was set up before. Let's just see where that's type of contract. And I'll save that. So now it now knows to populate that from that. And let's say choose another one. Say new field, and let's say the date. So this is the contract date. And I just confirm that, and I can now, I didn't give it. And again, I can either let it be manually, I can select, make it a date type that when the user sort of wants to create a new one of these, they can put it in themselves. But I just want to demo the kind of the automated approach. And so this will be like, say, required date. So say I'm requesting this contract from my legal department and I need it by a certain date. So that's basically it. Obviously, you would go on and you'd specify like client name, client address, whatever it is. And if you wanted to, like say there's the project cost, whatever, you can go and select all of that stuff. I've got one prepared. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to publish this. And I just choose, which I want. And then I can also set this to become the default view of the new library. So just say this is actually, I'll leave it like that, and then publish. So that template's been published, and now will be available from this new menu. So if I wanted to create a new one, I kind of just click on this, and it's obviously, I've only set 2 of these, but I can click on here and I can actually go to my SharePoint list. So this is going to the list that was created before, and I can choose. So say I've got a list of contract requests pending. I could just say that this is the first one that I need to create. And you'll see it's changed the values to like non-disclosure and that. So you can infer from there, like if it can pre-populate a lot of the information in that. And then I can say create this document if I'm happy with it. Can save it off as a PDF, say like FD, and it'll create the document for me. So that's also pretty powerful in terms of like document creation. And then also important to note, last thing before I go to the final demo, is in the model settings, you can specify a sensitivity label. So say I wanted everything uploaded into this contract test library to get a confidential policy. And remember, this is pulling from Microsoft Purview. That will happen. So you can see it, and then you just need to kind of sync, and it pushes that change into the library. So let's just quickly go back and see that the other thing has populated. I think we were using contracts demo. Might still take a while. Yeah, sometimes they take a bit. We can always come back there. The last thing I want to show you guys is, so we try to build out like a bit of a real world scenario, right? So we say that this is a contracts management solution. You can see it's in SharePoint, and we've got a couple of steps here. So it starts off with someone requesting a contract. That gets approved by the approver. It gets automatically created and moved into signed contracts. Once that happens there, that signed contract goes off to the financial department for approval and the payment. Once it comes back, there's a payout register, and the finance person can send out a remittance advice, and they're using all of these capabilities. So the starting point is here. We're in the sort of contract request. So I can request a new contract, say it's new SLA. I'm just going to sort of go through these very fast.
Gary, while you fill that in,
Okay.
Because we're going to need to conclude the webinar with that demo as the conclusion. I think I'm hoping we've answered all the questions. I just want to invite the audience to reach out to us if you had any questions but didn't manage to actually submit them or get them answered. And we'll happily reach out to you or put you in touch with Gary if you want to see a repeat of the demonstration or some of the demonstrations that is done today.
Well, so we've created that, and I'm just going to go. So this is grouped by, so this would be requested down here. It will appear here. And as soon as that is processed, I'll get like a Teams notification. Let me get my Teams onto the screen. So here you can see I've got this request. Obviously, I'm playing all roles here, but this would go to the appropriate person. It gets approved. Now, what's happening in the background is it's going off and using this model I've just created. It's actually creating a signed contract, kind of based on, I think this is it, this new SLA a few seconds ago. So you can see that contract approval has happened. If I go back to Teams, so the contract's now, it lets me know, that person know that it's been approved. Now what's happening, the contract is now gone off in the background to the finance department to approve the payment. And just, it shouldn't take too long for that to happen. So that's sort of, it should be added to this payout register. Yes, this was it. So that's happened. I should get my Teams approval. Okay, so here, request for payout, new SLA has been generated. It's got all the metadata in it. So the finance officer could either pay it or query the payment. So let's say they're going to pay. Just enter a comment and submit. So now that's been approved for payment, and it should move from there. The idea is that it moves and asks if we want to send a remittance advice to the person that's paid. Okay, we are waiting for Flow and Teams. It will take a second, but effectively we can just wait for that to happen. Something else to note: this is that whole solution is also surfaced in Teams. So I was demoing it to you in SharePoint, but all of that is also surfaced as a solution in Teams.
Brilliant, Gary, which I think brings you nicely back to your point originally that you made with Microsoft's content experience layer and how Teams obviously fits into this picture.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great, Gary. We're about 3 minutes over, and I always promise the audience that we'll finish on time. But I think there were so much exciting things to show, notwithstanding your mouse challenges, that we've gone slightly over time. So I'm going to ask if there's any final questions to
Gabriel. Just to show the last point here is the remittance. So it says it's been approved. Would you like to send remittance advice? And so we send that, and that actually does another document generation off a remittance template and populates everything into. Sorry to interrupt you there. And
no,
that
no,
ends,
no problem.
that ends off the process, and then I should get an email just to say that that remittance has been sent.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, and obviously demonstrating full document lifecycle from data capture to document creation and subsequent data extraction. Thank you so much, Gary. Also, just in conclusion, on the screen is some links to some useful information that you guys can follow. Like I said, the recording will be made available on our YouTube channel. Stephanie will share those details with you as soon as we've cleaned the video up, which will hopefully be within a week's time, early next week. We'll get that link out to you, and you can rewatch the webinar or share that with a friend. Our contact details is also on there, info@firsttech.digital, or reach out to your First Technology account manager, and they'll happily put you in touch with us to discuss this further if there's interest on your side. But thank you, Gary, so much for your time and your effort that you've put into preparing this, and thank you to all of you for attending today. It's very much appreciated, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Gabriel. Cheers, everyone.